Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Rosenberg, and I am from the University of Waterloo in Canada. Thank you for inviting me. And I spent some time thinking about what I could present you, and I decided to present something on 5G, but maybe I wanted you to see what kind of things we are trying to do with 5G in Waterloo, especially with one technology called multi-user massive MIMO. And the important term is multi-user. And you are going to see that when we start doing multi-user schemes, I'm going to explain in a minute what it means, then the problem becomes exciting again. So let's go. So first, let's go was a little bit too, okay, well. So this work was done with one of my colleagues, Professor Mitran, and two of my PhD students, Abdallah and Yuao, and a master student, Andrew. And there are so many students because I'm going to present to you 3 different projects. I thought it was better to give you an idea about how multi-user massive MIMO can impact a different aspect of sharing in 5G than to go too much in depth in one topic. So a very quick introduction followed by, in the part 1, we are going to look at multi-user massive MIMO resource allocation, and you are going to see that it's extremely complicated. So this is a fantastic technology, but when you try to use it and to use it to its fullest, it's not so easy to do. But then we'll switch to part 2, which is done with another student, where we explain how neutral host or slicing can be done when we use multi-user massive MIMO. So this is very interesting also because we are all talking about slicing one way or another, but slicing, when we are using this kind of technology, you have to think very hard on how to do it. And the third part, which is a new project that we started, is massive MIMO, multi-user massive MIMO with fixed wireless access. And the first, at least in Canada and in North America, the first real test case for 5G is fixed wireless access. So I'll explain to you what it is and why we think it's exciting and what are the problems we expect in this context. So the first part is finished for, we published a paper on the first part. Part 2, we have results. On part 3, it's mostly giving you an idea of where we are going, but no results as yet. So please feel free to interrupt me anytime. So very quickly, I don't want to, I know you know what is 5G, but if you think of 5G system, you should be thinking of 3 things. And the first thing is what we call enhanced mobile broadband, which is really 4G on steroid, better 4G. Then there are what we call mission critical application. That's completely new in cellular. It's to guarantee something to some application. So far, we guaranteed nothing, and it worked quite well without it in any case. But this is completely new. And the third thing, which is quite new for cellular network, is IoT. And cellular IoT is very different from, I was going to say regular IoT, in that it is promising global coverage, mobility management, and those kind of things. So I am not going to talk about IoT or mission critical application. I'm going to remain with enhanced mobile broadband, but roughly 5G is promising a lot, and hopefully will deliver some of that. Better speed, better, more devices will be connected, better, lower latency, and also, of course, lower, larger batteries, not larger, higher battery life. So when we think of 5G, really, the main technology maybe for 5G is going to be, if you think of one technology, is going to be millimeter wave, right? But this being said, what 5G is promising is, as I said earlier, dramatic improvement in terms of data rate, spectral efficiency, user experience, mobility management, latency, reliability. But all that is going to be done because we are going to rethink the wireless network. And at the physical layer, and often a cellular generation is defined by the physical layer technology. And if you have to, as I said, if you have to think of one, it might be millimeter wave. If you have to think of two, it might certainly be massive MIMO and millimeter wave. There are others, of course. And in terms of millimeter wave, it's absolutely not the topic of this presentation, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. We are going to stay in the mid-band. We are not going to talk about massive MIMO for millimeter wave. I have a project on that too, but that's a separate issue. So we are staying in the mid-band. We are staying in microwave. We are not going to go into millimeter wave in this discussion. And of course, and that's also important, 5G is also going to be based on exciting concept at the network layer. And the concept are the concept of sharing, which is not new, of course, and virtualization, which is slightly newer. And how is that going to be used to provide new services and better quality of experience to users? So this is it. So now let's talk about MIMO system. So the MIMO system, MIMO means multi-input, multi-output. This is, you have to think of in 4G, we already have MIMO system. Okay, but we also have a lot of SISO system. SISO means single input, single output system. But a MIMO system is basically, can come in two flavors. The first flavor is single user MIMO, where we are going to have a base station as multiple antenna. The user equipment, as I don't know if you can see my cursor, has also multiple antennas possibly. And each antenna will be used to send, in the case of single user MIMO, to the same user. And by using multiple antenna to the same user, we are going to be able to send multiple data stream, combine them properly at the user if we have multiple antennas here, and we are going to be able to offer a much, much better rate to the user. So this is the simplest of the MIMO. And the next MIMO is multi-user MIMO, where we are going to try to send at the same time, on the same resource block, to multiple users. We are going to send to multiple user data to multiple users in the same resource block. And this means that we have to decide which of the user equipment we want to transmit to at the same time, how to distribute the power to those user equipment. So it's going to become much more complex. So that's called multi-user MIMO. And to do that, we use a technology called space division multiple access. And MIMO is, of course, was already helping 4G very much, but it's believed to help, that it's going to help 5G much, much more. So MIMO in 4G is not enough, mostly because the configuration in terms of antenna is 2x2, 4x4, or 8x8. Most of the time in 4G, we use single user MIMO, while in multi-user MIMO, when used in 4G, is only supporting 2 users on 1 stream per user. So that's very limited. So massive MIMO, when you think of it, is a very large number of antennas at the base station, and possibly many antennas at the receiver. And multi-user means that we are hoping to transmit to all the users in each resource block. That would be fabulous if we can do that. Okay, but maybe we can't transmit to all the users in the same resource block. In that case, we are going to need to transmit to a subset of users. But if we do that, basically, we are going to be able to improve the capacity of the system very much. So in order to do that, we are going to use precoding, which I'm going to explain in the next slide. And in fact, linear precoding, which has been shown to be asymptotically optimal. So this presentation is all about multi-user massive MIMO on the downlink. So I won't say it, but I only talk about the downlink in the microwave band using linear precoding techniques. So what is precoding? Again, I'm not a physical layer person, so I'm just trying to give you enough information for understanding the presentation. Well, precoding, it's another name for digital beamforming. So if you want, with digital beamforming, we are creating so much more flexibility than with analog beamforming. In analog beamforming, we have one RF chain. With digital baseband, digital beamforming, we are going to have many more, one RF chain per antenna. And then it means we are going to be able on the fly to do beamforming to as many users, not as many users as we want to, but to more than one user at a time, to many users. So that's what the promise is. It's we are going to be able to do maybe on a per PRB basis, a choice of a selection of users and code, do digital beamforming on the fly to transmit to those users based on the objective function we have. So this is what precoding is all about. And now I'm going to tell you, to present you the first part of this presentation, where we are going to discuss the work done by our PhD student, Yuhao Zhang, and that's the first part of his PhD thesis. So if you look about resource allocation in multi-user massive MIMO, first you need to know, but that you know, is that we are going to have a frame, which means a certain number of time slot, and we are going to have a certain number of sub-channel on a PRB or physical resource block is 1 unit, meaning 1 sub-channel on 1 time slot. And this unit is the basic unit for scheduling. So whenever I talk about PRB, I'm talking about the basic unit for scheduling. And resource allocation, as you can imagine, is critical to the operation of the network. And resource allocation for SISO is already quite complex. For a simple system where you are selecting 1 user per PRB, you select 1 user, that's the first thing you have to do. Then you have to choose the power you want to use to transmit to this user, and then choose the MCS, modulation encoding scheme. Well, in multi-user massive MIMO, you are going to do first power allocation, which is to decide on a per time slot basis how much of your power budget you want to give to each of the PRB. So this is the same process, if you want, for SISO on massive MIMO, on multi-user massive MIMO. Often it's too complex, so the people do equal power allocation. So it means they give the same power budget to every PRB. It doesn't have to be that. We have published paper showing that if you do, you can do much, much better than equal power allocation. But at least this process was there with SISO. The second process is user selection. So for each PRB, you are going to select a subset of users. And in multi-user massive MIMO, the question is how many users and which user? Which users? This is much more complex than in SISO, where you use round robin to take 1 user at a time. Here, you have many more degrees of freedom. What is the right size of the user set and which user set? So that's already complex. So now there is something even worse, if I may say, is if your users have multiple antennas at the UE, then in that case, we can have multiple streams per user. So now we have to decide not only the number of users we want to transmit to, but the number of streams per user. Okay, so this is completely new. That's another process to add. And the next is power distribution, because now you have a power budget per PRB, but you have to distribute this power in this PRB among all the users that you have selected. Okay, and this is critical, we'll see, to the performance of your system. So power distribution is very complicated, and it's a problem that didn't exist in SISO, because in SISO you chose only 1 user. So again, very complex. Then you have, when you have done all that, you have not finished. You have to do precoding, and then you have to do combining, if you have multiple antennas at the receiver. So as you can see, and last but not least, having done all that, you have to choose on a per user basis in a given PRB, which modulation and coding scheme you are going to use. So imagine doing that very, very, very fast. Okay. So obviously we are going to do things in a non-optimal way, but in this presentation, I'm more interested in trying to understand what parameters or which processes have the most impact on the performance. So I'm not interested in practical schemes. I'm interested in understanding what are the parameters that have the most impact on performance. So usually there, of course, the literature on multi-user massive MIMO is huge, but most of the people make some very interesting assumptions. For example, they use sum rate. They don't do proportional fairness. They don't introduce fairness in the problem. However, fairness is critical. They use Shannon as opposed to adaptive MCS. I'll discuss that next. They usually work on one sub-channel on one time slot. So it's so complex that they solve the problem only for one sub-channel and one time slot. So basically one PRB. And most of the time they work only on single cell. Okay, so as you can see, there is much, much more work to be done. And they forget completely that there are some physical hardware constraints that might be very important. And that's what we call PAPC, or per antenna power constraint, which means that we cannot, if we have a certain budget in a PRB for transmission, we cannot concentrate all the power in one antenna. We have a maximum amount of power we can use per antenna. Otherwise, and it's because every antenna has a power amplifier, and a power amplifier, you want to use it in its linear mode, and so you cannot create too much, you cannot use too much power per antenna. So this is usually neglected or ignored as a constraint. So adaptive MCS, 99% of the paper use Shannon, and by using Shannon, they are able to write better papers. They are also able to write theorem, but the problem is in reality, the Shannon formula is not the right one, because what is Shannon? I should have said first, it is in that sense, it is if you have an SINR, you want to transform this SINR in a spectral efficiency. And of course, we all know that Shannon gives us a relationship based on log in base 2 of 1 plus SINR. So that's the blue curve here. So here on the x-axis, you have the SINR. On the y-axis, you have the spectral efficiency. Shannon is the blue curve. And in any practical system, you have a set of existing, defined modulation and coding scheme. And hence, the real function is a function which is piecewise constant. And as you can see, the problem of using Shannon is, of course, that Shannon is much higher than the real function, but that's okay. We could scale it. That's not a big deal. But most importantly, Shannon is continuous, which seems to indicate that a little bit better SINR gives you a little bit better rate, which is not true in reality. And also, it also tells you Shannon with epsilon SINR, you get some rate, while in a real system, you need a minimum SINR to get a rate. And also with a real system, there is a maximum spectral efficiency you can achieve, while with Shannon, you can get any spectral efficiency if you have the power to create, or if you have a very large SINR. So the point we are trying to make here is that maybe some of the results obtained with Shannon might be misleading. And we'll show you at the end that it is in fact misleading in some cases.
By the way, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
Just to check, because we're doing a working group on the Shannon currently.
Yeah.
And so if I get correctly the results I read, you can actually approximate the continuous function if you're ready to pay the price in terms of latency to reveal the signal and in terms of complexity of the encoding scheme. So
yes, you can. I mean, Shannon is an approximation, right? If you think of it as an approximation of the real one, right? You can use it as an approximation, but be careful because it gives you sometimes wrong insights. I'll show you in a minute what I mean by wrong insight. Okay.
I was just saying the opposite way, like you can reach Shannon limit if you're ready to pay the price in terms of building a specific encoding, in terms of being ready to wait maybe 10 seconds before you are ready to reconstruct the signal. But if you can't do that, obviously, with 4G, because you need 10 milliseconds to get and this is why you've got this gap. And,
yes, absolutely. To be fair, this gap is because there is a set of encoded modulation encoding scheme.
Yeah,
and yes, and you could choose better one or stronger one. And for 5G, hopefully, we'll have better one, higher one. But the reality is you are not going to have enough, or it doesn't make sense to introduce too many of them, because then you spend more time thinking about which one is the right one. But from our perspective, it's more, is it okay to use Shannon in theoretical paper? And of course, it is okay up to a point, as long as we know that sometimes it gives you the wrong insight. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So what is the general objective of this study? It is to do a joint proportional fair resource allocation. So why joint? Because remember, I have at least 7 processes to do together, right? Remember the processes I introduced. And I want to do that in a multi-carrier, multi-cell system under practical consideration, meaning PAPC and adaptive MCS. And what I want to do is go from an optimization approach where I try to understand which parameters are important to a practical scheme. And what we have done, so the student, the first thing he did, believe it or not, is proportional fair resource allocation for a single cell, single carrier, with PAPC and adaptive MCS. So his mean, you'll see his contribution in a minute. Yeah, there was enough contribution to study even a single cell, single carrier to publish a paper in Transaction on wireless communication. I never know which one, on communication system or wireless communication. So you have to understand how complex the problem is. Okay. Then step 2 is to go from a single cell to a multi-cell, and that is creating a huge interference estimation issue. Then you want to go to multi-carrier, and all the work we have done in that we would do in step 1 to 3 is going to be assuming the user equipment as a single antenna. And when we go from one single antenna to multiple antenna, the user equipment, then the problem becomes much more complex, and that will be our step 4. So in step 1, we have done step 1, and what we have been able to say is, can we do what is the best linear precoding we can do under PAPC and adaptive MCS? What is the impact of PAPC on performance? So what do we do? What do we lose when we ignore PAPC? Are existing linear precoding good enough? And the existing linear precoding are RZFT, ZFT, MRT, EGT, all those exist. And are they good enough, especially under PAPC? And is selecting all users good enough? Because if we can select all users and transmit to all users in every PRB, life is great. That's one less process to do. Okay. If not, we are in trouble. So our contribution, we created a general joint proportional fair resource allocation problem that we formulated and solved. We assessed existing linear precoding and showed how they work, how to do power distribution optimally. And then we drew insights, which I'm going to explain to you. I'm not going to spend time on equations. Nobody likes equation in a talk. I'm going to explain to you what we have learned from the equations. So the paper has been accepted for publication in IEEE Transaction and Communication in January of this year. So remember, this is a single cell, single carrier, multi-user, massive MIMO, where the end user have a single antenna. And the problem is, just to show you, just to flash the problem, and this problem has a constraint for PAPC, which is usually ignored, and a constraint for some power, which is usually there. Nobody can forget completely about power. And remember, the function f is the piecewise constant function, which is, in order to put f into an optimization problem, you need to introduce binary variable. So you have a complete nightmare, because you have a problem which is non-convex, non-integer, and very hard to solve. So we are going to, I'm going to explain very quickly what we have done to solve the difficulties that we have encountered. So we have replaced.
Can I ask a question,
yes,
Catherine?
Please.
Yes. So you alluded to this function as acting on SINR, right?
Yes.
But if I remember well, there are these Telatar formulas for the capacity of the MIMO channel, which involve the spectral properties of the gain matrices.
Yes.
And so by what step do you reduce these MIMO capacity formulas to things which boil down to SINR? Also, I don't understand what SINR means in the MIMO setting, so for the given user.
Okay, well, the SINR is going to depend on, I didn't explain that. I think I have a hidden slide somewhere, but I don't know how to de-hide it. The SINR is this formula, which is a very nasty formula if you think about it, because you have as you say, the matrices and the precoding. So what you are optimizing is the precoding. And in this SINR, the only interference you have is the intra-cell interference. So it's the interference because you are sending to multi-users in the same cell. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so we have not defined the precoding here. The precoding is part of the optimization problem. Mm-hmm. If we define the precoding, then we can introduce the notion of equivalent channel, which is, I think, is what you are talking about. But the problem is the equivalent channel depends on who you send to. So most of the paper, they assume that you send to everyone. So in that case, you can compute the equivalent channel beforehand. But what we are going to show is, in fact, you cannot transmit to everyone. And hence, you would have to do an iteration, knowing to how many users you can transmit to. You have to recompute the equivalent channel. But that's not what we do here, because here precoding is part of the optimization. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
So in any case, we show in the paper that the way to take care of the adaptive MCS is to in fact approximate it by a continuous approximation, but which is much better than Shannon. So we use something of the type, basically what we use, I don't know if you can see that. I don't think you can see that. So we use a function of the type a square root of x. A square root of x is a much better approximation of the MCS adaptive function that I showed you earlier than Shannon, much tighter. And then we have to be very careful when we create a feasible solution. We have intra-cell interference, which is really one of the real problem, because it creates non-convexity. And believe it or not, just adding a PAPC, the per antenna power constraint makes the problem much harder to solve. And in particular, it prohibits closed form solutions that are found when you don't assume that they are PAPCs. So we have solved those problems. So I'm not going to spend time on solving this problem. I'm much more interested in showing you the kind of result we obtain. So we have shown how to solve the problem to quasi-optimality. We have studied the existing pre-coding techniques under PAPC on adaptive MCS, and nobody had done that. So under PAPC on adaptive MCS, even equal power distribution, which is often used, where we distribute the power equally among all the users that have been selected, cannot be done easily because of PAPC. You have to, PAPC forces you to modify the equal power distribution. And we also compute optimal power distribution for these schemes. And we are going to compare them. And in order to do that, we need very complex models. So we are using the 3GPP urban macro and rural macro. We are using a 3D deployment within a sector. We are using a correlated Ration channel, a location-dependent line of sight probability models. All that is 3GPP. If you try to do something simpler, you are sent back by the reviewer, right? So you need to have the kind of model, and those models are difficult. And we are using a UPA, a Uniform Planar Array, at the base station. And so now this is interesting. So I'm going to show you results. On this axis, x-axis, it's the number of users. On the y-axis, it's the performance in geometric mean of the data rate of the users. And this is for a system with 64 antennas. So you can say, is 64 antenna massive MIMO? Just at the limit. The power constraint is given by this. And we have, we are doing, what is N? Let's forgot what is N. No, well, I'm not sure if it is, it will come back to me. So this is the first thing here. You have RZFT. RZFT is the best known existing linear precoding under equal power allocation, equal power distribution, which has been modified. So that's what you would do without thinking too much, a little bit though, because you have PAPC. Now you do, yeah.
In terms of total throughput, is it kind of constant?
It's the same.
Okay.
It's the same. It doesn't change. You can have it in GM or AM, it doesn't change anything. So next, we are going to use the existing precoding, but with optimal power distribution. So the only thing we do is proportional power distribution, proportionally fair, optimal power distribution. And you see 4 curves. The green is RZFT, it's still the best. As you can see, just by doing power distribution better, we can improve performance a huge amount. Okay, the black is ZFT, and the other two that are out for lunch are MRT and EGT. So what is that telling us? It is telling us that RZFT is ZFT is almost as good as RZFT, and power distribution can help a lot existing existing precoding. And what we show is that the best you can do is in pink. Okay, so if you are ready to spend more effort, you could get better performance. But so now Patrick, Mitran and I, we disagree. I believe that the green is good enough, that RZFT with optimal power distribution is good enough. He believes, because he's a physical layer person, that it's worthwhile trying to go to the pink with practical skills. Okay, but that's, hence, what we have learned is the importance of power distribution and the fact that a better precoding could gain you some performance, especially when the number of users is small. We continue. Now, if we look at the number of antennas, so now in this axis, we see the number of antennas, and here still the geometric throughput. And what you see is RZFT with modified equal power distribution, RZFT with optimal power distribution, and that's the best we could do. So again, what we see is, of course, increasing the number of antennas help with the performance, but we can see it starts to plateau. Okay, and we can see also that the larger the number of antenna, the better it might be to use a better precoding than RZFT. And now this is very critical. That's the impact of PAPC. As I said, most of the paper ignore PAPC or assume that the PAPC is very high. If the PAPC is very high, RZFT is optimal. Sorry, the RZFT is quasi-optimal. But if the PAPC is tight, very tight, we are quite far from the optimal result. So RZFT with PAPC does quite worse than the best we could hope for. So PAPC does matter. And finally, what is interesting in this figure is not the left-hand side, but the right-hand side. The right-hand side is telling us what is the number, the number of users that are really selected per PRB on average. And what you see here, you have 32 users. Wait a minute. Yeah, you have 32 users, and we almost never select 32 users when the radius of the system becomes high. So this notion that you can select all the users you have is in fact probably completely wrong. And we have seen many results that show that. I mean, many cases where it's true. So this gives you an idea of the kind of work we are doing to try to better understand the impact of parameters. I had promised you something on Shannon, but I realized the stuff I promised you on Shannon, we did it for NOMA, not for Massive MIMO. So if you are really interested, I can discuss that with you. It's on NOMA that we show that Shannon is giving weird results. And now let's talk about neutral host. So now we are no more physical layer people, we are network people. So what is a neutral host? And basically, we accept the fact that network upgrades and expansion are very costly process, and it's very difficult to get new site and to install equipment. As we know, sharing and virtualization are key concepts in 5G, and we need to understand how those concepts are impacted by multi-user massive MIMO. So what is a neutral host? A neutral host is a telecommunication infrastructure provider, could be a city hall, could be a mall or an operator, that rents its equipment and possibly its spectrum to different virtual network operators in a specific location. So for example, think of a mall. The mall owner buys a small cell, puts it in the mall, and then Orange, Free, and SFR and others are buying slice of the equipment and the spectrum within the mall. They can either bring their spectrum, or in that case, they buy a share of the spectrum. The neutral host focuses solely on network deployment and sells network as a service to cellular operator. What it is, it's really a type of slicing. And what is our study? We consider an indoor or outdoor setting where a neutral host owns a small cell based or single cell based on multi-user MIMO. And it's renting slice of the small cell to different VNOs. And each VNO has a separate service level agreement. The benchmark, to be fair, the only thing operators know how to do today is what we call static sharing, meaning I give you 10 channels, those 10 channels are for you forever, as long as you rent them, nobody can touch it, and that's all, okay? And the problem with static sharing is we can probably do better than that. So the research question is really how much better than the benchmark can we do if we share the resource in a more flexible way. We still guarantee you your share, but when you don't use it, we let other people use it. And the problem of doing that is people are afraid of free riders. They are afraid of cross subsidies. So basically imagine Orange on free. Imagine Orange has bought a big slice, and right now no users of Orange are in the mall. Then if free can use the slice of Orange, then free is a free rider. Okay, and Orange is cross-subsidizing free, which we don't want. So we want to find a way to do sharing without cross-subsidizing. Okay, so that's our goal in this. It's can we do sharing without cross-subsidizing? And we can. So I'm going to go fast because I realized that I didn't expect. I'm just going to show you the results because I think nothing better than a result. So what we want to do is we want to find a solution where everybody does better in the same way. So if Orange gets 20% gain, we want Free to get 20% gain, and we want SFR to get also 20% gain. So by sharing, everybody should have the same relative gain. That's what we call a good situation to be. And what I'm going to show you, don't forget, we are using multi-user MIMO. Okay, what I'm going to show you that if we do sharing in a dumb fashion, everybody does better, but not in the same gain, not in the same relative gain. And hence, the bigger person here, let's say the bigger operator, say Orange, is going to say, no way, I don't want to share because I gain 20%, you gain 80%. So what we need is a method by which everybody gains, hopefully, 50%. Okay, so this is what. So let me explain on this picture what we are trying to do. So static SLA, if you have 100 channel and you have 3 VNO, and the first VNO has 60%, has rented 60% of the bandwidth, the second 30%, and the third 20%. With static SLA, VNO1 gets access only to 60 channels out of 100, VNO2 30 channels, and VNO3 20 channels. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you are absolutely right. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely right. With full sharing, everybody gets access to the same amount, the same increase, right? The same proportion, okay? And what we are going to see is the way pre-coding is done is in this case, for example, in the full sharing in every PRB, we are going to try to transmit to all the users of all the VNOs, but the power distribution is done per VNO. So you don't share power. And here it's going to be the same on a channel here. We are going to do pre-coding on all the users of VNO1 and VNO2, but the power remains, again, unique to its, stays with its owner. And let's see what we get. So these are just the system. I think there is nothing weird here, except we have 100 antennas and we are at a 2.5 gigahertz band. And I'm going to show you the result. So here, this is when we do static sharing. So if we do static sharing, we see the arithmetic mean of the VNO2, which is the small VNO, and VNO1. Here we have only 2 VNOs. Alpha is the percentage of the resources that goes to VNO1. So the larger alpha, the larger the performance for VNO1 and the least performance for VNO2. So that's static sharing. Now we do full sharing. So what we see with full sharing is everybody does better. VNO1 does better, VNO2 does better. However, when the alpha is very large, VNO1 gains almost nothing, while VNO2 gains a lot. Okay, so full sharing, and if we start looking at gains, we see that the gain of VNO1 decreases with the value of alpha, while the gain of VNO2 increases terribly. Clearly, full sharing doesn't work. That's not what we want. And we have a solution that I showed you earlier, and this solution gives you approximately the same gain, and it's very, very simple to implement, because basically we are just sharing, we are giving the maximum number of channels to the largest VNO, and then we are giving a number of channels which is proportional to the increase given to the first VNO. So it's very simple, and we are able to give approximately the same gain, which means we have avoided free riders. And this is, we think, very exciting, because if you think about it, by sharing, we gain, when alpha equals 0.5, meaning the two VNOs have the same share of the resource, we can gain 70%. 70% gain in throughput just by sharing intelligently. And when one of the VNO has 70% of the resources, we gain approximately 35%. So it makes a lot of sense to share now that you know that you are going to be avoiding free riders. So this is the same, so I'm not going to, this is for 3 VNOs. And for 3 VNOs, you have to decide, well, here you have 40, 30, the alpha are 40% of the bandwidth goes to VNO1, 30% to VNO2, 30% to VNO3. What we see in blue is the performance of the VNO when you do static sharing. In dark blue, what the performance when you do full sharing, and in red or pink when you do sharing our way. And what you see here in terms of gain is, with our method, the gains are about the same, and the gains are huge in this case, 100%. We can improve the capacity by more than 100% by doing sharing, and we do it in a safe way. And we have another example. This is an example where the alphas are different and the number of users are different. But even in this case, the gains seem low, but they are at 50%. While with full sharing, we would go all over the place. So we think it's very promising, and especially because it's very simple what we propose, and we think it's going to have a big impact on the way slicing should be done, or neutral host should be done. So we have gone from a very simple solution, which is a solution that everybody is using today because they are afraid of doing anything else, which is static sharing, to a full spectrum sharing, which is much better in terms of spectral efficiency, but which is prone to cross-subsidization, to something we propose where we have a slight reduction in spectral efficiency compared to full spectrum sharing, but we are able to eliminate almost all cross-subsidy. So we are quite excited by that. Finally, if we have time, yes, I think we have time, I just want to talk about fixed wireless access. So this is done with UAO and Andrew, and this is a process just starting. So there is a very poor broadband service issue in rural homes, especially in Canada, because Canada is a huge country, the second largest country in the world, with half of the population of France. So the density is very low, and there are plenty of rural areas with terrible connectivity issues. So the reason why it's the connectivity issues are so terrible, it's because the infrastructure costs too much. And this is a major issue, especially during a pandemic. So historically, we were providing, or the operators were providing different services for mobile service and for home. Home was provided through DSL, cable, satellite, on mobile through cellular. The beauty is we see a convergence between mobile and home. And this convergence means that we are going to use cellular not only for mobility, for mobile users everywhere in Canada or in France or in the US, but also to provide home connectivity, broadband connectivity. So now your 5G cell will also be used to provide connectivity to homes. This is called fixed wireless access. And so you have to imagine that each home is going to have a set of antennas, 5G antennas on top of their roof. So those are fixed users, right? Like a modem. It's like, but it's the beauty is we are going to be able to have many antennas. It's going to be relatively bigger than a smartphone, and it's going to be higher than a smartphone. And we are going to offer services to those homes, and the backhaul remains microwave point-to-point. So the 5G fixed wireless access is expected to become a major service in rural areas. And the underlying technology is multi-user massive MIMO. And the problem is when you buy a service for your home, you are used to get a guaranteed bit rate. Okay, a loose one, but you are used to if when you buy a service for your home, to say, okay, you are going to have 20 megabit downlink, 5 megabit uplink, or 1 megabit uplink, or whatever. But rate guarantees are not typical for wireless services. So the main challenge, how can 5G operators plan and operate for guaranteed bit rate for rural fixed wireless access homes? And so we have just started. There are plenty of interesting research questions. Some are planning questions. For example, can we offer, given a mobile operator, a certain bandwidth, infinite backhaul, a set of homes, number of antennas per base station and per home, can we offer, or which bandwidth do we need to offer a certain GBR per home? So that's a planning question. There are also some operation questions. How are we going to be fair, to schedule in a fair manner, knowing that we have guaranteed bit rate per home, and so on and so on. So we have just started, and of course the backhaul might be a bottleneck. So the focus of what we are doing now is really the first point. And the problem here is complex for two things. First is because on a home, you are not going to have one antenna, you are going to have many antennas. So multi-user massive MIMO with multi-antennas at the receiver, it's a pain. That's problem number one. And problem number two is we want to guarantee a bit rate. So, but anyway, the beauty is that the users are stationary. And because we are in a rural environment, we can assume that there is very low inter-cell interference. So we can consider a single cell only. And under full buffer assumption, we can write a problem, which I've written here. And we are here. We are just having written the problem. Now we have to solve it and to be able to answer questions such as under which condition is the problem going to be feasible? And how is feasibility affected by the number of homes, the number of antennas per base station at the base station, and so on and so on. So this is a new problem, but what is exciting is that I think we have here a model that would work and that would give us some interesting insight. And I think for most of the operators in Canada, the first frontier is fixed wireless access. So the results are not yet there. And to conclude, I hope I have convinced you that massive MIMO multi-user is changing the paradigm of sharing in wireless network in terms of slicing, neutral host, or fixed wireless access. And a lot more needs to be done. And it's a very exciting topic, and we are quite excited to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Any question in the audience? I see someone is allowed.
Yeah.
I don't know who he is.
Yeah, it's Lou.
Ah, Lou, okay.
Yeah.
Lou, okay.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. Can you talk a little bit about NOMA?
Yes, so now you have to, let me take 2 minutes. Okay, what we have done in NOMA, but I have to remember now, I wish, yes, in NOMA, we have done 2 things in NOMA. We have first looked at I have done so many things recently on. Okay, so let's start by the end. Then hopefully the beginning will come. We are looking at practical scheme for NOMA 2 and NOMA 3, and in particular, what we have shown is that power allocation in NOMA is critical. So by power allocation, I mean the fact that if you have multi-cell, it is probably better not to give the same power to all PRB in all cell. So this is really what I call power map, or you can even call that frequency, fractional frequency reuse, or whatever term you like. And what we show is when you use those power map, you can gain a huge amount. So that's the first thing we showed. The second thing we showed is that the scheme that have been proposed for practical NOMA are usually of one of 2 types. They are either focusing only on user selection, or they are focusing only on power distribution. But and it's unclear is if it is better to spend your computation time on user selection first and do simple power distribution, or if it is better to do very simple user selection or do much complex power distribution. And we are finishing the paper, but we think that power distribution is the key, the key component more than user selection.
I see. And yeah. Is it still in the massive MIMO framework?
No, it's not.
Oh, so it's single input, single output.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And another question, because I actually did my PhD on resource allocation for NOMA.
Yeah.
Are you considering the Shannon capacity or?
Never.
Okay.
Never. And also, I forgot to tell you, we invented what we call it. Well, it's not an invention. We study what we call hybrid NOMA, basically a situation in which not all user equipment have the same SIC capability. Right. So we always, whenever we see a study on NOMA, all the user equipment have the same SIC capability. But you might have older phone without the same SIC capability. Hence, you have to solve the problem where user selection is more complex, because in whenever you select someone, you have to make sure it has the capability to be at this rank in this order in the user selection. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's very clear. It's very interesting. Also, do you have any pointer?
Well, if you send me a message, I should be able to send you the paper. Should be finished, I would say, next week. And to be fair, the student made the student was sure that the most important was user selection in terms of practical scheme. So he spent all his time trying to invent a simpler user selection than exhaustive search or greedy search or so on. But then the problem is power distribution is as consuming in terms of complexity and is as important in terms of performance. So now we are trying to find the right to show the trade-off in complexity and to show people where they should spend their computational power.
I see. It's very clear. Thank you very much. So I will send you an email after the call.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
It's pleasure.
François?
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 questions. First, a practical one on the fixed access.
Yeah.
So I know it's very popular in North America. Do you know whether there are any projects of using this type of fixed wireless access in, say, I mean, millimeter wave in Europe?
Well, so first, this is not millimeter wave. Huh?
Because, this is not millimeter wave?
No,
okay.
But that's the point is, what we are doing here is rural. In a rural environment, we want coverage, right? So we could do coverage in millimeter wave or in microwave band. It's TBD. Many people or many operators are thinking of fixed wireless access in urban areas, for example, in Toronto.
Yes.
Right, and in that case, it will probably be millimeter wave.
Right. That's in mind. Yes.
So the question is, will it be millimeter wave in rural area? I'm very interested nowadays on the digital divide, and so this is really for rural areas, and it's not. It might be millimeter wave, but it might be microwave, because most of the time the operators don't use all their band in rural areas. So why not use them all their microwave band to start with, right? But the problem will remain the same. That's we do it in a rural area because that's what motivated us. But the problem will remain exactly the same. If we provide connectivity to home or to offices, to small business and so on, we are going to have to guarantee something. And guaranteeing with wireless is not easy, as you know.
Yeah, I was asking a question because, I mean, Europe, I mean, there is fixed wireless access, I mean, but not necessarily MIMO in the classical wave lengths, right? So sub 6 gigahertz. But the question was more for the, I know that people are thinking of even wireless backbones,
so
which would be millimeter wave in cities or things like that. Right?
Yeah. So the backbone, in fact, the backhaul, I keep on changing my mind on the backhaul. Is it a problem? Is it a problem in the sense that do I have to do it jointly with wireless and so on? We can discuss that if you are interested, because I keep on changing my mind on that issue.
Okay. And the other question was on the first part. I mean, you were comparing with zero forcing and various types of zero forcing. And so I mean, I have a mental picture of this zero forcing to be that you arrange, I mean, various combination of signals to be in the null space for the other users, right? So, and this idea. And so is there a spectral interpretation of the optimization that you do, which would be the analog of what is known to understand what goes on for zero forcing? This more fancy optimization that you do, can you interpret it in terms of some spectral properties?
Yeah, in fact, okay, so that's a very good question. I'm not sure. I'll try my best to try. I have simplified the presentation a lot, because, but what we show is we can create something called generalized delta forcing. So instead of forcing the intra-cell interference to be 0, we accept it to be less or equal than delta. Okay. And so you have to choose the right value of delta, but that's a separate issue. And when you do that, you get close to optimum. So hence I would interpret it as it might be too much to try to do exactly zero forcing. You can do better by allowing a little bit of intracell interference. That's the way I would translate it. I never thought of it that way before, but since you forced me to think about it, that's what I would. That's how I would interpret it.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So we have to study the paper then. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I can send it to you if you're interested. Yeah.
Please. Yes. Thanks. Thanks for the talk.
Other questions? So thank you again, Catherine, for your talk.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting with many different topics.
Yes, maybe too many. Thank you.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.